Mishmash!
Hey, today we're bringing back the core faction focus series, and we're going to be talking about Fidwog. Undoubtedly, Fidwog is one of the fan favorites of the series. And for good reason. They're Hobbit core. How do you not like that? But beyond their undoubtedly adorable stature and incredibly unique design philosophy, the Fidwogian Quor are not to be trifled with, as they are unmatched in combat, and are the true masters of siege warfare amongst the world of Alwood. Though Koftir may be the bulwark of the Royalist cause, Fidwog is the true backbone. But like with our previous episodes of the core faction focus series, you can expect a good portion of lore, and at the end I'll show off the new sprue and show you how I paint their fatigues. But before we get into it, make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe, share it with a friend, and if you really dig it, consider becoming a channel member. For just $3 a month, you can see my videos early, and for $5 you get access to a weekly Q&A, in which you can submit your models for review. And additionally, you get access to unique roles and channels within the Mishmash Discord, you get to see some sneak peeks, and you can submit your models there. Just want to say a huge thank you to my channel members, you guys are amazing. Also, if you want to get your mitts on the new figures for this video, you can actually use my affiliate link down below to Wargames Atlantic, and you can use my discount code MISHMASH5% to save 5% on your purchase. But that's enough of the promotional stuff, let's get tucked in, have a moth cake, and let's talk about the Fidwoggers. Nestled far in the eastern reaches of Alwood lies the country of Fidwog. Home to several of the first families and numerous royalist clans, Fidwog has been a land of heritage and tradition for generations. In contrast to their royalist allies being the Koftirans and their Great Wall, Fidwog's Great Barriers are imposed by the highest peaks of Ibren Kif and the Great Gult. Combined with the common gentry and passionate support of the common Fidwogian Quor, the land has endured struggles of every kind, standing steadfast and unyielding since time immemorial. Despite the early successes of the crusade against the nation of Koftir, Fidwog has remained resilient and unshaken by the Crusader juggernaut. It's all the more impressive considering Fidwog literally shares a border with the fatherland of the Crusade, that being Tok. Despite being subjected to regular Crusader attacks over the past 10 years, Fidwog has suffered comparatively light casualties. Most of the losses have come from the expeditionary forces outside of the kingdom, along with naval sallies against the besieging Crusader fleets. Despite Tok's best efforts, Fidwog's resilience has outmatched even the mighty Alakinder's great army. And as the war rages on, Fidwog's defenses have only grown stronger with the influx of anti-Crusader refugees and royalists from across the eastern reaches of the continent. One may find the notion of these naturally small Quor withstanding and even blockading a literal war machine for over a decade to be laughable. Surely it has more to do with the rugged topography of Fidwog. Well, I dare you to voice such a sentiment to the admittedly short yet iron-willed Quor who inhabit the great mountains of Fidwog, and not end up looking like a fine slice of gourmet Swiss cheese. By this point, I think I've made it rather clear that Fidwog's strength lies in the undying loyalty and deeply rooted kinship of its Quor. But this resilience goes far beyond warfare. Fidwog's true riches stem from its vast abundance of ores and mines, which have long been the lifeblood of the kingdom's prosperity. Many Fidwogian clans have expanded their homes and fortunes by contributing to the wealth of the kingdom. This has fostered a culture of highly incentivized duty and service to the fellow Fidwogian kin and the crown. And yes, despite the natural tensions and occasional strife that arises from inter-royalist affairs, Fidwog has solidified itself as a vital ally to the royalist cause. Proving to be a sensible diplomat and leader, King Edivus Frederick III had extended his hand to the fleeing first families of Tok, Akon, and Shralm. This would lead to the formation of an even stronger royalist alliance, and would prolong a war of which Alakinder had intended to end quickly. But jumping to the recent timeline, in 1776 the Freydarl Overseas Department would be formed. As the Crusade faltered with defeats in Koftir and their home, Fidwog had redoubled her efforts to take advantage of Tok's defeats and missteps. To this end, the FOD would be created, designed to provide succor and armed assistance wherever the need might arise. Fidwogian spies and asymmetrical warfare experts had infiltrated dozens of kingdoms, trained thousands of partisans in the art of guerrilla warfare, and generally were just little troublemakers. Throughout 1777 and 78, the FOD had a hand in several major victories against the Crusade. Primary among these victories was the instigation of the leading armed insurrection of southern Kreisel by late 1777. Prior to this, most of the FOD victories had been small and easily ignored by the Crusade. However, the FOD would prove to be an increasingly deadly thorn in the side of the Crusade, granting an increase in funding and the formalization of the department as a traditional military command. Along with this, it would maintain its asymmetrical warfare specialists and paramilitary experts, while also gaining traditional military formations of divisional strength. By the ending of 1788, the FOD command included nearly a dozen new constituted infantry divisions with tractor and artillery divisions in the early stages of formation. However, the FOD's first pivotal offensive task wouldn't come until 1780, this being Creven's desperate need for reinforcements due to the ongoing invasion of Western Arnyara. However, for nearly a year, the FOD would actually be unopposed in their efforts, allowing them plenty of time to set up hasty defenses in preparation for oncoming Escovite forces. However, a key factor in this conflict was the lack of an established supply route back to Fidwog. This would leave the FOD reliant on former Grand Army supply depots, of which their defenses were constructed upon. However, despite the preparation, the shock and speed of the Eastkey mechanized attack nearly broke the FOD's lines. Starting from an all-out derby of armored combat and leading into a bloody, brutal melee, the Battle of Arantini River would be remembered as three of the darkest days of the Crusader era. Tens of thousands of corps were slain in this battle, leaving a casualty rate of over 80% on both sides. Dozens of the highest honors for bravery were awarded by Fidwogian and Escovite forces following the aftermath. But these were only for the recorded events. There were innumerable skirmishes and battles that left no survivors or witnesses to tell the tale, leading to the untold demise of many of Allwood's bravest sons, their sacrifices unrecorded and lost. And unfortunately, this was only the beginning of the FOD's enduring struggles. In the winter of 1781, a second wave of FOD forces had landed on the Fidwogian beachhead. The first wave, though battered, had still managed to establish fragile connections with the Crievish Watch and partisan fighters in the region. The promise of a third wave had loomed on the horizon, still adrift at sea. But beyond this final push, there was little hope for reinforcements. To make matters even worse, the situation in the east was growing increasingly dire. Crasil had descended into chaos, erupting into a civil war in a desperate bid to cast off the Crusader yoke. The conflict had grown so boisterous that it actually threatened to spill out of Crasil's borders, destabilizing neighboring regions. Along with this, back on the home front, defenses were stretched thin, and Crusader submersibles and aircraft launched relentless attacks on shipping routes across Lake Morandi. This would result in a completely devastating loss of vital supplies, of which the FOD desperately needed. And perhaps in a fit of prideful arrogance, Prince Cyrnal Willem Frederick, or the King's 17th and youngest son, chose to conceal this dire situation from his father. Now the FOD found itself in desperate straits. Low on ammunition, moth paste, and petrol, the FOD is now perilously close to being stranded in Creven. Now, the department has joined forces with the Crievish partisans, abandoning their tractors and support units as they've scoured the land for whatever scarce supplies they can find. Now, survival is their only mission. At this point, there is no other hope than for a miracle. Though I may say the same sentiment with just about every single faction in the universe of Quor, the Fidwoggers are definitely one of the most unique. It's always funny to me knowing how many people that I've gotten into Quor that hate the Royalists but seem to love the Fidwogs. Maybe it's just because they're tiny. But jokes aside, it's interesting to me just how different they are from their Koftiran counterparts. With the exception of Creven, these two are the Royalist factions. Koftir represents the old blood of Quor society, slowly deteriorating to the modern age. Well, Fidwog is actually rather modern in terms of their technology, and they're rather feisty. When you consider all these factors, it's pretty clear to me that Fidwog has more than earned its rightful place as one of the, if not the, favorite faction in Quor. Their resilience, the struggles, and their unyielding stubbornness have cemented their legendary legacy. But with that, I think I've effectively gone over everything there is to know about their basic lore, so let's do a little painting. And I'll throw in some cool little tidbits while I'm doing it. In this episode, I'm going to be painting the FOD fatigues, and to do so I'm taking inspiration from the watercolor art, as the box art painted for the Wargames Atlantic product is a little bit more akin to the old school design of the Fidwogian Quor. From what I've been told, this is to differentiate them from the Gwents, which makes sense. But, I don't know, I like the brighter red, so that's what we're gonna do. To start things out, once I've Zenithal primed the miniatures, I'm going to be applying 2 thin coats of Khorne red all over the fatigues. This color is actually really perfect for what I'm going for, and you could actually easily turn this into just about any red you please using different washes. If you want to go for the more box arty red, you can use some purple shades. If you want to use what I'm doing, well, we'll use some Carroburg Crimson. Just be sure to apply this once it's absolutely dry. Also do want to mention, you're going to want to paint the entirety of the cuffs. I didn't here because I thought the blue cuffs wrapped around the entirety of the wrist. This is not the case. But once our shade has dried, it'll take a good little while. You'll want to apply some Wazdaka red over the entirety of the erased surfaces. For this, I'm once again doing 2 thin coats. This color doesn't really pop until the second coat, but once it does, man, it looks so good. I chose this scheme because I really do think it is a good balance between the old and new colors. I don't know, I'm just a huge fan of bright reds. But as you see, just the way that it glides over the raised surfaces, it just pops out so much. But once we're finished with that, I then apply a little bit of Macragge blue to all the blue trim on the model. This includes the cuffs, the little side robe things, and this is also something that I had to be careful about. It wraps around the neck, but the inner portion is supposed to be red as well, which I had to repaint a couple of times. But it is what it is. Just be sure to have a steady hand when you're doing this. Also, you could just do this before painting the entirety of the red. The reason I waited to do the blue was because I wanted to make sure I liked the red scheme first. I actually painted this once I was finished with the lore portions, so had to make sure. Kinda feels weird using Citadel colors again. I've been using Pro-Acryl for so long now that I haven't really touched mine, and I kinda feel silly for not doing so. These are still really solid paints. And tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's a lot more user-friendly for my audience. Now for all the black portions of the model, this is including the helmet as well as the straps around the model. I'm using some satin black from Pro-Acryl. Could just use a Baden black, however. Just be very careful when applying this, obviously. I don't really want to spill this on the red, and I kinda did. To clean it up, I actually used a combination of some Khorne red with a little bit of black, just to kinda recreate some shadows. Additionally, I'm also going to be using this to paint the gun, as well as the bogan casing on the back. Yeah, that's actually part of canon. The Fidwogs like to use bogan rifles from Fallen Crusaders as basically canteens, or in this case, for liquor. Now, once the black is fully settled in, I actually mixed a little bit of white into the black to create a gray highlight. For this, if you're using Citadel colors, you could just use some Eshin Gray. I just like to mix it together because it's simplistic. Now for all the leather portions of the model, I'm using a little bit of mahogany from Pro-Acryl. This color is one of my favorites of Pro-Acryl, hence why I'm using it for this portion. It's kind of perfect for leather. You can use it on the gun casing, as well as the leather strap on the helmet. Now for the blue, we're going to be using a little bit of Drakenhof Nightshade, and I'm very carefully applying this into the recesses, as well as applying it over the head wrap and the little cuff things. While that dries, I'll then be applying some Leadbelcher to the metallic portions, again using more Citadel colors. Side of the leather straps, obviously, everything that we painted black earlier will be painted with Leadbelcher, this being the gun, the helmets, and the little bogan casing. I guess it is technically a gun. And I'll also be painting the spare magazine, though I probably shouldn't have painted over it like I did. There is a little bit of the leather strap that I painted over. Fixed it up later, though. Now coming back to the blue, I'm mixing a 50-50 of Macragge blue and Baron blue from Army Painter. This is kind of the perfect color. It's really not much to write home about. I mean, I'm basically just painting an Ultramarines color, but it works, doesn't it? Plus, with the side of your brush, painting the side trim is super satisfying. It does seem a little intimidating, especially if you're a newer painter. But trust me, once you have a good tip on your brush, it looks so good. Happy little man, isn't he? Now, for a final highlight on the blue, I'm mixing a little bit of Baron blue with some Macragge blue. I was going to use Fenrisian gray, but that's just a little too bright for my taste, and there's not really many areas that I could really apply this that it would be appropriate, so this mixture is kind of perfect. Now coming back to the red, I'm using just a little bit of Dragon Red from Army Painter, and as you can see, this really brights up the red. You want to be more selective with this, however. As you can see, just tracing along the sharper highlights really brings out all the folds in the cloth, and it really just goes to show that a little bit of vibrancy can make so much of a difference on a model. Also, for sharper highlights on the sharp highlights, I actually mixed just a tiny bit of white to add kind of a pinkish touch. You don't need to do that, but I think it looks good. Now for the metallics, I'm actually going to be applying a mixture of Drakenhof Nightshade and just a little bit of Oblivion Blackwash. And once it's dry, you can apply your final highlight using some Silver Metallic from Vallejo Game Color. This is one of my die-hard favorites. I love how this applies. If you want to make a more beat-around finish on the helmet, you could use a dry brush, but personally I decided to use my more thin detail brush to create a much more clean design. Though I do prefer a much more rustic look to metallics, I think this is fitting for Fidwog. And with that, I've gone over everything there is to know about the Fidwogs, and I've gone over how to paint their scheme. I'm really happy to finally get around to making this video, as I would say, even over Warhammer stuff, this is the most requested video on the channel. The amount of Quarmongers in the comments that have been clamoring for Fidwog for months now, I have lost count. So all the more, if you liked what you saw, please make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and share with a friend. And remember to mishmash, kit bash, and paint some fantastic miniatures. And you're gonna. I promise. See ya.